Well, there it is, everyone. It is officially confirmed that Red Bull and Aston Martin have both breached the cost cap for the 2021 season. That cost cap being $145 million. The FIA came out with it today on October 10th, 2022, saying that, yeah, in fact, the rumors are true. Red Bull and Aston Martin have both broke it. Now, of course, this report was supposed to come out last week, but was delayed. Who knows why? Probably just had to tie up some loose ends, or maybe it just didn't work out, the timing. So who knows? Either way, it is confirmed that that's what happened. Today we're going to be focusing on Red Bull because that's honestly the more relevant team and kind of has the biggest implications. So they not only have one breach, but they have two breaches. They have a procedural breach, but also a minor overspend breach. And this is all for the 2021 season. And the minor overspend breach means that they exceeded the $145 million cap by up to 5%. So anything over that 5% would be a major overspend, but this is just a minor one, so under the 5%, which of course means that the punishments or the disciplinary actions are going to be much less severe than a major overspend. Now, if you'll remember, Christian Horner was extremely confident that nothing was wrong. He came out to everyone saying that there's been no overspend and that they followed everything to the book. However, that just doesn't seem to be true. I'm not saying that there was any malicious intent, because I don't think there was. But when you're dealing with $145 million, I completely understand how it's pretty easy to go over by a few million and not have all of those numbers accounted for. Speaking of Christian Horner and Red Bull, here is the statement that they put out. They said, "We note the findings by the FIA of minor overspend breaches of the financial regulations with surprise and disappointment. Our 2021 submission was below the cost cap limit, so we need to carefully review the FIA's findings, as our core belief remains that the relevant costs are under the 21 cost cap amount," meaning that they still think, from the internal accounting that they did, they still think that they're under the cost cap. So there's going to be a lot of comparisons about whether the FIA or Red Bull's accounting is correct. And of course, this will take some time. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if all this wasn't resolved and didn't come out until the end of this season, as really there are only a few more races left. Okay, so the FIA says, you know what, you've breached the limit. What's going to be done about it? All F1 Twitter, F1 Instagram, they're all talking about what is going to happen for these cost cap breaches. So we're going to go through the penalties and what the FIA has for a minor cost cap breach. The penalties include a reprimand, basically a slap on the wrist saying, don't do that again. A deduction in points for both the constructors and or the drivers championship. That would be huge, whether it's this season or last season. Either way, major implications there. Exclusion or suspension from stages of the championship. Again, that's a pretty major implication there. And then limitations on the ability to conduct aerodynamic testing in the future, and a reduction in the cost cap for the following year. Now, who knows? You have a lot of people who are big Red Bull and Max Verstappen fans saying that, oh, it should just be a reprimand or just a slap on the wrist or a small fine. You have the Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari fans saying that it should be something more severe, points deducted, having to sit out some races, major fines. I think something that is underrated and that would really damage them next year is having their cost cap deducted. We already know Toto Wolff has come out saying big teams can't just throw money at an issue anymore. So if for the 2023 season, Red Bull has their cost cap deducted, which it's already going to be less than it is this year, that would mean that their research and development would not be as strong as it is this year. So their car for 2023 would have just that much less improvements on it. Now, that being said, the punishment of exclusion or suspension from the championship is only reserved for material breach, which of course this is just a minor breach, not the material breach, which means that Red Bull and its drivers cannot be thrown out of last year's championship for its overspend. This one's tricky because you can kind of see it both ways. It depends. I'm sure Mercedes would think that if they had 5% of the cost cap to spend, that they'd be able to make some improvements to the car or whatever it was to push them over the edge to beat Red Bull. But I guess the FIA is saying if you spent less than 5% over the cost cap, it really doesn't make that material of a difference in the championship. And that's one of those things, really, it's hard to test, and we'll never know. And everyone on Twitter will be talking about and having their own expert opinions about it. So now here's where it gets a little tricky. The FIA's cost cap administration can now enter into a settlement with Red Bull, referred to as an accepted breach agreement, or an ABA. Basically, where Red Bull gets together, the FIA gets together, they do a settlement just like in court. They admit to being wrong, so then maybe the sentence or the punishment is deduced a little bit. However, if there's no agreement that can be reached, or the FIA administration considers it to be more appropriate, it can refer to something called the cost cap adjustment panel, which would be made up of, they say, independent judges who would decide on what the penalty should be, going outside to an independent board. Now, I know the F1 fans, the teams, might not have the most trust in the FIA to consistently dish out penalties, and why should they, as the FIA has been all over the place, honestly. I think that it's time for the FIA to be more transparent in showing what their process is for dealing out punishments like this, show more of the administrative side so that it can be more transparent and we know the thought process behind it. Not that that should change anything, but it just lets teams, fans, and drivers know that the FIA is being consistent and open with all their decisions that they make, which would be the best way for the FIA to build up some trust with, again, the teams, drivers, and fans. So, of course, we don't know what's going to happen yet. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if a penalty doesn't get dished out until somewhere between this 2022 and 2023 season. Max is already the champion of the season, and I don't think that's going to change, or that these findings by the FIA will have any sway in that matter. Max has already won the title with 4 races to spare, and it'll stay that way through these last 4 races. Now the battle for second place is going to be exciting to watch Perez battle Leclerc, and you know who I'm rooting for. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you guys think the penalty should be, whether it should be harsh penalty, easy penalty, and what precedent should be set for the teams down the line who, whether minorly or materially, break the cost cap. Thanks.